Welcome to Pondering Play and Therapy,
where we set out to explore the importance of play in our everyday lives and how this can also be therapeutic. We'll be discussing our own experiences in the hope that others may ponder play in their own lives too.
Philippa.
And I'm Julie. This is our very, very first episode, and we've simply called it First Ponderings. And Philippa, tell me about your morning so far.
Well, I've been very excited about doing this first one. I've been up since 5:30. I've been taking notes on what we're doing. I've been for a walk to try and calm myself down from all the energy. And I just can't wait to get started, Julie. But I think that you might feel slightly differently about this than I do.
Yes, I was thinking you and I know each other fairly well in a professional role, and we end up having these very long, detailed, wonderful conversations about working with families and play. And we decided that we'd like to get those conversations out there. I feel very nervous about doing that, whereas you feel very excited about that. So I was not up at 5:30. I was up at 7:30. I went for a swim in order to not think about it. So I'm going to ask you to start with, Philippa, what is it that got you so excited this morning and wanting to say something about pondering play and therapy beyond just you and I? What got you so excited?
Well, I think there are several things. One is it's something new that I have never done. No idea what we're doing or how we're going to do it or any of those sorts of things. I guess what allows me to be excited about the not knowing is that I trust the relationship with you and we'll be okay and that we'll figure it out. And I guess that's from years of not knowing and failing and being able to kind of succeed. And I just think kind of play is such an important part of everybody's life, whether you're a newborn baby or whether you're 91. We all should play, and are often with families, with people, with friends, play can be tricky and can be hard. And we have some really great and interesting conversations where we recognize that. And I think it would be really useful and hopefully helpful for other people sometimes to hear some of those conversations. And so it's the doing something new and being excited about that, but also hopefully sharing our experience with other people. Why are you doing it, Julie?
Yeah, so I'm thinking for you, this experience of doing a podcast, which neither of us have ever done before, is making you feel very excited and very playful and very positive, and it's giving you a huge amount of energy. But I'm noticing, interesting, what it's doing to me when I meet something new. It causes me a lot of nervousness and fear and a sense of I might fail, and so I want to step back. So even in the process of doing this podcast, you and I are not coming at it with the same energy or the same playfulness. This is a playful adventure, but this playfulness for me feels a bit scary. It's making me want to withdraw. It was making me this morning wishing that you were ill and couldn't have this meeting this morning.
Oh no, Julie, we would have been on here at 8:00 if we could have been.
Yes. But we wanted to start by saying to listeners, and we have no idea who our listeners will be. It might just be one of our neighbours or one of our colleagues or one of your children or my cat or your dog. Who knows? But we hope there might be some other listeners beyond that.
And Julie, tell me before you do that, I just wondered why you are doing it. So you've started your feeling. Why are you doing it?
Why am I doing it? Because I think underneath that nervousness and that trepidation and that fear of getting it wrong, which is, themes for me in life, I have a sense with you that play is deeply important in human life. And in my experience with friends and family, and as a professional, as somebody who works with children through play and through therapy, it's something that other people often are afraid of or dismiss or kind of poo-poo and say, oh, well, I'm done with play. But my deep interest is in, and conviction is that play is needed and is life-giving right through the human lifespan. But I don't meet that often in other people. So like you, so you and I have the same base thought, but actually our expression of it is quite different at the moment.
Yeah.
That will change. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Well, carry on.
So we wanted to say, inevitably, you and I, because we work, we know each other in a professional situation where we meet each other for consultation about our families that we work with as therapists, counselors, social worker, working with families who have experienced some trauma or some disruption in their relationship. And we use play as one of the tools to help those families connect.
Yes.
So inevitably, we will hark back to or remember cases that we have worked with. And we will do our very best to anonymize. Well, we will always anonymize, and we will always keep any details out of our description of those families. But inevitably, there may well be a family at some point that notice that the family being described in some way reflects their situation or resonates with them. And it may well be that family, or it may well be a composite of several families. But if you notice that, we would invite listeners to receive that in the spirit in which it is intended, to give a broad, generalized example of something in order to help everybody's awareness of how play and therapy can work together. So we just wanted to say that we are deeply grateful for all the families we've worked with and are very respectful of the confidentiality that we contracted with for those families. And we will be telling, composite and small scenes from some of our therapy situations. And if somebody recognizes themselves or thinks they recognize themselves, please let us know if that wasn't okay, but receive it in the spirit in which it's intended to help everybody's awareness and understanding. So I will need to script that bit, yeah.
And I think it's just such a privilege, isn't it? I just think that we've had a privileged career, that we've been able to work with families, with children, with colleagues, with professionals, with really great experts that have kind of given us the knowledge and the experience that we are hoping to share with whoever is going to listen to this. And I suppose that's, it's with that knowing and holding that privilege that we're doing this. And it's a balance, I think, don't you, between kind of how would you share the knowledge, the experience, the pitfalls, the successes that you've had with people coming through or coming up. You're a lecturer, so you're sharing your experience with people there. We're both supervisors, so we're sharing our experience there. So we have to take the knowledge that we've gained from the work that we've done. And that, in some ways, helps the next set of families or the next contacts that come through, or even our own relationships or whatever they are, to benefit, I guess, from what's been before. And whilst hopefully kind of being very mindful of the privilege that we've had with each individual family.
I'll add into that, but while between us, we've probably had about 50 or 60 years of professional experience.
We don't have to go that far, do we?
It's had a long time. I've been doing it since my mid-20s. Yeah. So we've got many, many years of experience. And does that make me an expert? I don't like to hold that hat. I'm forever learning. I'm forever meeting each family or each child or each parent. And as a new relationship, and the way I play with one child is different to the way I play with the next child, because that child is part of that relationship. So while we have a lot of experience between us, and as you said, the pitfalls and the mistakes, and there have been many, and we've talked about lots of those moments, and we hope to share some of those as well. Does that make us experts? I have a lot of tales to tell. And if those tales can be of use to other people in developing their own expertise and their own ways, then I'd be really happy to know about that. What I try and do with my students is not make them mini-me's in their development as playful therapists. It's the person who becomes the therapist or becomes the parent, or it's the person and not the strategies or techniques or anything they're doing. It's how can they find the playfulness within themselves? And that will be different to my playfulness.
Yeah.
And
It will
yours is
step
different
into
to mine.
Yeah. And it's different in families, isn't it, as well? People have 2, 3, 4, 5 children, and you play with each child differently. It doesn't mean that you prefer playing with your first child to your third child, but your first child needs something different than your third child. You've got more experience by the time you get to the third child, but often people will say they feel less of an expert parenting kind of later children than they do earlier children, and that's the same, isn't it? It's about being in the moment, in the play, with whoever you're playing with, whether it's your granny and you're playing cards, or it's your 2-year-old and you're playing Peppa Pig, or it's a little person who's come for some therapy for trauma or something. Each of those plays are going to be different. And in that moment, you just bring kind of who you are, but our experience and our path has influenced where we are, aren't we? And I guess that's what we're hoping to share, is that we're not saying this is how you've got to do it. What we're saying is these are our ponderings about it. This is our thoughts about it. This is our experience about it. Hopefully it's helpful for you. Let us know. Tell us about it.
And something we were talking about before we pressed the record button there was, when each of us and any listeners, hear something being spoken about, or if I read something, sometimes that really resonates with me and I really connect with it. And I get quite excited if somebody writes something, or I hear something or see something in a film that I've had that experience. And I connect with it, I resonate with it. It confirms that what my experience is a human experience that others have shared. And I remember that as a child reading something in a book and thinking, gosh, that character has had my experience. I always got a bit annoyed with them to begin with. Then I realized they'd printed thousands of these books. So other children are reading about that as well. So I'm not so alone. That sense of when I hear something that resonates with my experience, I can feel not alone, and it can validate my experience. So people listening may hear things that really boost them and validate.
Yeah.
But equally, you were saying about what happens when that you might connect with something and then it has a very different feeling. Can you say a bit more about that when it doesn't boost, when it doesn't validate?
That's very true. Thinking a little bit about that can feel quite sad, can't it? That you notice maybe what you didn't experience or haven't had, or that you missed out on, and now that you found it, how can you kind of have that experience? Maybe, thinking about a child that doesn't experience being played with or doesn't have a bedtime story, but then you become a parent at 30 or 40 or 20, and you're reading your child that bedtime story, and it can kind of feel like, but where was my story when I was a child? And where do you put that, and how do you sit with that, and how do you be compassionate to yourself that you can be sad about reading a bedtime story and happy at the same time? You can be pleased to be reading it to your child and sad that you didn't experience that as a child, or that you didn't have something to play with, or that you missed playing with a specific person or something like that. And I guess that's one of the things that I know we talked about, was that we're not going to talk about play as this amazing, wonderful thing that makes everything joyful, because actually play can be really hard. And I think we're going to cover that in the next episode. But I suppose when we're sharing our experiences, we want to share all of it, don't we? The sadness that can go with it, the grief and the loss that can come with just not having it, or not having the person around to be able to see where you got to or how you play. Or, for me, my nana and I played cards and frustration and things like that with my nan, and I really miss playing those games. I don't think I've ever played frustration again since my nan's passed, because it's sad. But then there's card games that I teach to the younger generation that my nan taught me, and that gives me pleasure.
Yes.
So there's a both to it, isn't there?
Yeah, and I'm just thinking that you're talking about your nan. It's got me thinking about my nana, and how, we can put play in the formal sense of playing a card game, playing something that says on the box that you need to play it. So there's that type of play. But I'm also thinking about the type of playfulness that comes in the kitchen, that comes, certainly in my family, has come in the playing around with food, like cooking, making things. And I know in my family, there is the passing on of how to make a particular cake. It's called a dumpling, a clooty dumpling, a dumpling you make in a cloth. And I know my nana taught my mum, and my mum taught me, and I have now inherited the cute. I've inherited the cloth. It's not the actual still, it's, the cloth wears out, but you get a new cloth. It's a pillowcase. And then I've had the absolute pleasure a couple of weeks ago of teaching my 14-year-old niece how to make that dumpling. And it wasn't as good as my mum's, and it wasn't as good as my nana's. And I need many, many years of practice of it. But just the playfulness of being with that young woman and passing on what I remembered, including I needed to have a plate in the bottom of the pan. And other people in the family were going, why do you need a plate in the bottom? I was going, I don't know why I need a plate in the bottom of the pan. You wrap the dough in a piece of cloth, and you wrap a string around it, tie it very tightly, and then you lower it very slowly into a pot of boiling water with a plate at the bottom. And I don't know why that plate needs to be there, because it all floats. It's not touching the bottom. But once it got boiling, I realized the plate needs to be in the bottom. To make the sound, it rattles. So for me, I think the plate's there just to remind you that that you've got this thing boiling for 3 hours, and not to forget it.
Yeah.
Not leave it to boil dry. This plate rattles. I have no idea why the plate is there. But that whole 3-4 hour experience with family members a couple of weeks ago was playfulness as well. So play doesn't need to be sitting playing something that says, I'm the playing with.
Yeah.
It could be, and we're going to talk about that in other episodes. What is place?
And how we do it. And I suppose it's just about thinking in this one about kind of that, our intention for the podcast is to be collaborative. It's to be connected, to be relational with one another and support one another, and that we do regularly, but hopefully also with our audience. If we get an audience, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we will. I have every belief. I'm putting my intentions out there for the universe. I have a belief that this is what we're meant to do. So we will connect. Yeah.
To connect and to hear back from an audience, to ask questions, to give your ponderings, to describe play in your situations. And then every now and again, we'll have a podcast where we're simply bringing forward those questions and we will ponder those questions together. And we are not the experts. We have no answers. But we do love the word ponder because it allows for curiosity. It allows for mistakes, if such a thing exists in play. It allows for, between one podcast and the other, changing our minds and having new thoughts. So nothing is static. It's and shows orange. So we might not remember what we said a few weeks ago. I'm not quite in that stage yet.
We can change our mind.
So should we end episode 1 for now?
That's fantastic. So you've been listening to
Pondering Play and Therapy.
Wow. See you next week.
Bye-bye.